access SQL Server. Your mission tonight. Can you secure your SQL Server database against the evil faction hell-bent on getting into your data? If your mission were to be successful, you will never know, because all they have to be is right once, and you have to be right every day of the year. And so this message will not self-destruct, because we're going to upload this presentation later on tonight. All right, now that's what I call an intro. Good evening, everybody. This is Juan Soto, who's broadcasting live from Chicago, Illinois, and it's my honor to be on with you guys tonight. We got several people who are going to help us out during this presentation. One of them is my co-worker, and I felt to say my friend, Ben Clothier, who will be our presenter online. So, Ben, go ahead and say hi there in the chat, and let me know if you can hear me fine through your interpreter.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Hello. I hear you perfectly. Thank you.
Great. He hears me 10 by 10. Also with us tonight is the wonderful, gorgeous Lucy Pine, who's the coordinator for Access User Groups. Lucy, say hi.
Good evening, everybody.
Oh, don't be modest now. And I noticed Octavio, who heads up our group for Access Latin America, is also with us. Bienvenido, Octavio. We got Robert Aaron. Looks like Robert's on with us as well. Robert, welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Disclaimer, Robert does work for us part-time as a developer at IT Impact as well. So we're glad to have him on board. All right, so tonight is a topic that I feel is very prescient. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute everybody here if I can. Let me see if I can do that. Or Lucy may have to do that for me. I'm not sure. Lucy, do you have to mute everybody for me, or?
You should be able to do it under participant along the top.
Okay, I'm a participant, and then
does it say
menu here? And then audio, okay. And I got disconnect audio. I'm not sure because I'm not the owner of the account. Let me see if I can figure this out here real quick. Well, no, that's not good.
Thing is, if I do it, it may mute you too.
Go ahead and try it, and if you don't hear me, then bring us back.
Okay. Okay, can we hear you, Juan?
Hello, this is Juan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So it looks like you can hear me good. All right. So, wow, what a year 2014 has turned out to be. It seems like every week we hear another story of somebody being hacked, whether it be Target or Home Depot or even the U.S. government yesterday, Central Command. These are the people who have the combinations to the missiles. And they were hacked on their social media accounts. Now, to be fair to them, their Twitter and YouTube accounts are public-facing, and they, of course, don't own Twitter or YouTube. So there's very little they can do beyond making sure they have a strong password policy to prevent being hacked. But still, it was a black eye to Central Command yesterday. And, you hear these horror stories. So we're going to talk about how to harden your SQL Server database in a little bit of generic terms, because the in-depth discussion could take us hours, but at least point you in the right direction. Tonight's presentation is brought to you by AccessExperts.com, the leader worldwide in expert access solutions. All right. So, oddly enough, the mere fact that you're using SQL Server is already an improvement over Microsoft Access Security. And this is one of the number one things I preach when I meet new clients. I mean, yesterday, Robert and I with a new client here in Chicago, and we were installing SQL Server there and updated their database to SQL Server. And one of the reasons I gave him was you have a database with secure data such as customer addresses, customer phones. I mean, a lot of these companies that have databases, they have enough data in their database file where somebody with bad intentions can grab that and go out and open credit cards and secure lines of credit and who knows what, do what with that data. So the mere fact that their data is on SQL Server is important. Why? Because if your database resides on an Access backend, all I need to do is to copy it to a flash drive and walk out the place. And that's why I say in my comment here, avoid sneakernet. Right? So sneakernet means I'm walking out with your data on the flash drive. It's very easy to do. If you know anything about Access, probably very easy, right? Now, that doesn't mean I can't do the same thing with your SQL Server database. But if you follow the recommendations we're going to provide you here today, plus you exercise some common sense, it'll make it a little harder. And that makes it to my next point. If somebody is hell-bent on grabbing your data, there's very little you can do with somebody who's determined and resourceful and also well-provisioned that you can, there's really going to stop them when they have the time on their hands, right? The hacker only has to be right once to get access to your data. You have to be right every day, day in and day out. 365 days of the year. So if somebody were to be hell-bent on grabbing your data and you have a database of secure information, you know, they'll try today and they'll try tomorrow and they'll try the day after tomorrow and they'll keep trying until they find that hole that's going to let them in, right? Now, having said that, how important is that database to a hacker or a hacker society or a hacker network overseas, lurking in the dark, right, with some names like GOP? I mean, how probabilistic is it that they're going to go after a client of ours at IT Impact? Not very, but still, it's something that you need to plan for and do your best. I mean, all you can do is do your best, right? That's all we ask that you do. You got to do your best. You got to keep security in the forefront now. And because you're keeping it in the forefront, your client's going to appreciate that. And so it's important to you and to your client that security is a topic that's discussed early and often. When you develop a new solution, and after you implemented it, there should be a security context. How prepared are we? Do we have our firewalls patched? Do we have our ports blocked? Do we have the database secured with a strong password? Who knows the admin password? Who has authorization to this database? All of these are discussions that you need to have and bring to the forefront. And all these news, all the news that you hear from Target to Home Depot to U.S. Central Command yesterday is going to provide you a fodder to be able to approach your client or approach your employer and have them start thinking about what to do next. Now, there's several different models. We're going to talk about two of them here. Basically, there's the Active Directory, leveraging Active Directory with user groups, and there's also SQL Server logins. And you might be surprised which one is more secure. Now, with Active Directory, this is typically implemented in a corporation that's got at least one domain, many users, maybe even have a full-time IT department, where you've got security handled at the workstation level by Windows. And so when I come in every morning if I rebooted or I have to, I logged off the night before, I've got to enter a password, right? I have to have a valid user account and password. And so we do this all the time. We leverage that security context with our SQL Server solutions so that when you log into your workstation in the morning, you don't have to log in to Access or log into SQL Server. We'll leverage your account at that PC to grant you access to the data. Now, having said that, you probably wonder, well, why do we do that? Well, number one is we're not responsible for security at that point, right? If there is a security hack or a security issue, it's on them, on their network, on their administrators, because we're database guys. We're not security guys. And that's the first thing I tell my client. I've actually had a conversation with a client last week that is using our services to develop a three-part solution. They have access at their computer workstations, they have SQL Server on their network, and then they have a website in Azure with another SQL Server database. So that, for example, when the user wants to authorize a customer to log into the website, the user issues a password through Access, they get an email, the client gets an email, they go to the website, they enter their username and password that was assigned to them, and then they get prompted for more for their own password. And if they lose their password, they can just click on the link on the website we created for them that will say, forgot your password, click here, and then they get an email with your password. So the extent of our security is to let their clients know security is an issue and to work with their IT department to make sure that their IT department is up to snuff when it comes to understanding the security problems involved with Windows and SQL Server and so forth. Now, one advantage also is when you have a large implementation, we've implemented SQL Server with Access solutions with 20, 30, 40 users. And, you know, when you have a company that big, using a solution that big, you've got a lot of people going in and out of the company. People get hired, people get fired, people resign. And so it's a lot easier for the IT department to place a new hire into the right SQL Server Windows group, which in turn is validated into SQL Server, which is what this means here, right there in the bottom. All right, so say, for example, you usually have three groups. You have the admin group. These are employees who know what the heck they're doing, so you give them administrative privileges because they're the ones that work with you on the project to begin with, and they are they're responsible for keeping the database right and values of the drop-down box is correct and so forth. Then you have another security group, usually is power user, and these are people who need to deal with the invoices or the estimates or the orders and all other aspects of the application, but they're not admins, right? They can't create other admins. They can't modify some drop-down list or some other aspects of the application. And then you got what we call the management group, which is read-only. And these are high-level managers. All they can do is run reports and see the dashboard and so forth. So these three groups is what usually we sometimes have more groups, right? We might have a Salesforce group, a salesman group that can only do estimates and convert them to orders. Then we have an accounting group that can only create invoices and put into payment information. But you create those groups in your Windows directory, and then you have a trusted relationship established with those Windows groups and SQL Server roles. And then once they're trusted in SQL Server, anytime you add or remove somebody from a Windows group, they get automatically all the access rights in SQL Server. So it's a wonderful way to set up security with Active Directory. So that, for example, an IT guy, an IT help desk, all they need to do is make sure that person is in the right group in Windows, Active Directory, and they'll get the rights and privileges associated with them in SQL Server and by extension in your application. So that's Active Directory, right? It's leveraging the directory. It's leveraging the password that somebody put in the morning when they walk in through the door. And we will grab that. Now, some disadvantages to this approach, obviously, is that I walk in and I log in at 9 in the morning, right? I log in, and I grab my coffee cup, and I go and I get my grab cup of coffee, Joe, and there I wanted to see Bob in accounting, who's my best buddy. I want to talk to him about the Ohio game that happened last night. And I forget to log off my workstation or secure my workstation. Somebody can just as easily sit down and start using the application, right? So if I'm hell bent on getting into the system and you don't practice proper workstation security, I can sit down at this workstation while you're off having a cup of coffee, and now I've got access to everything that you have access to. That's one disadvantage. We'll talk about another one in a minute here. And please, if you do have any questions, please relay that to Ben online with the chat window. If you don't know how to use chat, then you just go click on chat at the top toolbar there and start asking away. Make sure you ask the question so everybody can see it. All right, so some of these I already went over, right? Network admins can add people to the user group and so forth. And then the issues, data can be exposed outside access. So that's the other issue I want to talk about here, this one here. So here, when you have that relationship established between Active Directory and SQL Server, I can launch Excel and do a Power Query and extract database data from your SQL Server. I don't need access for that. I can just launch Excel, initiate a data import, and now I can do a data dump into Excel and then copy that to a floppy drive, USB drive. I was going to say floppy. USB drive. Does anybody use floppy drives still yet? Let me know in the chat. And then so we can berate you. And then, I bring it back home, and now I can import into Access and do whatever I want with that, right? So Active Directory is only as good as the people that you entrust your data with, which is the employees. All right, so those are some of the benefits and problems with Active Directory. Let's talk about SQL Server Security. So SQL Server Security is usually what's implemented, it's always what's implemented when you create a cloud solution, right? When you create a solution where the data is in the cloud, and then you have a group of people who are not logged into a network in particular, and the database might be in Azure, and we also host databases in our firm. And so we created these applications. And then, for example, one example I like to use is we have a franchisee client who has 35 franchises throughout the U.S. And they're all using the application we created for them in Access by launching the application, logging in with Access, and then those credentials are validated against the user table. The login that they use is not a SQL Server login, but rather the code in Access has the appropriate password and username to establish a connection with that server in the cloud. And we'll talk about how the benefits of that setup. But SQL Server does come with a great security model. You can create groups, you can create roles, you can assign granularity to people SQL Server logins to the point where you can say Bob has rights to just this column. He can only change this column, the date, invoice date, for example. And so it's just a wonderful security model that you can use and leverage when you don't have Active Directory. And again, you can be very granular in terms of what tables they can see and what they can do with those tables, right? You can say, you can only view the orders table, but you can modify data in the invoice table. And you can set up those kinds of business rules just by leveraging roles in SQL Server that in turn have rights to different tables in your database. But when you create a solution such as the one I described for you where people log in, let's take this another example. You use SQL Server as your database for a ASP.NET website. or sometimes we even use it for our PHP websites. And so in this case, you may have a product that you're selling or a service that you're offering to worldwide, right? You're hoping that this grows worldwide and you get thousands of users and then maybe hundreds of thousands of users. And you're not going to manage that with SQL Server logins. You're just not. You're going to have instead a table with usernames and accounts, and they have a status associated with them, whether they're active or inactive. And the application itself is the one that's logging into your SQL Server database. Now, that has a huge benefit for you. Number one, your users don't have the username and password. So unless they're using your application, they don't have access to the data, right? So I can't go to Excel and say, right, if we're using a user table, we can't go to Excel and pull up Excel and then query against that table, that SQL Server against the web. I just can't, because I don't have the user credentials that will allow me to read those tables outside the app. Because when I'm logging in through the Access application, I'm using a username and password that's stored in the user table. Right, so when I need to grant people access to the database, I need to provide them with a username and password that's stored in the table. When they try to log in, there's a stored procedure that's validating them against that table, and now they have rights to the application, not to the database. So they never have access to the database. So if security were paramount, right? If I walked into, for example, Boeing, and I'm working on a project, super secret project there that has highly sensitive data, I would recommend SQL Server Security. I mean, if you're that concerned about somebody launching Excel and grabbing the data with Active Directory, I would just say in a heartbeat, yeah, let's just use SQL Server Security for this, because then they lose, then they don't have any access to the data outside the app. And you know, Armin Stein, who is also going to be presenting at POG this spring, is he actually told me one time he had a huge discussion with one of his clients. Oh, if you give SQL Server Security, that's not as secure as Active Directory. He says, no. Active Directory is not as secure as SQL Server Security, because if I know the IP of the server, the name of the server, the instance name, and I use Active Directory, I can tap into that data. So the only con to SQL Server Security, of course, is user must log in via your app, which I also believe might be a benefit for you, right? A benefit as well. And then, of course, IT is not needed in that instance, because all the security is handled through the application, right? And then you can use a single SQL account and use it on your app. Now, one other advantage of that is, if for some reason your SQL Server account or password is compromised, then, you know, and you start hearing the song in your head, then you can always change the password, and that's it, you're done, right? You change the password in SQL Server, you update your application, everybody's locked out. Unless they get the new application. So it's another benefit of that. All right, so you know, those topics, I'm using Active Directory groups to allow authorization into your database, as well as using SQL Server Security. There's a lot of information out there on the web. All right, I'm not. Okay, Ryan's got a question. What's different on this slide with SQL Azure? There is no difference. With SQL Azure, you've got to use SQL Server Security, right? But you can still have a table for users to validate against your application. And so with Azure, you got to use SQL Server. Now, I understand Microsoft may already rolled out some validation that you can do through your domain. So if you're authenticated through your domain, you can then use Windows Security. Domain security with your Azure database, and they do that with Office 365, and they may or may not enable that. So what I just said, you know, applies to only recently. You can only use SQL Server Security, right? So good question there. But you know, these methodologies, I'm not going to go over them in this application because I want to get to the good stuff. I mean, this presentation, I want to get to the good stuff. So basically, social hacking, brute force, and these validation of Active Directory using Active Directory to validate users, or SQL Server Security. There's a ton of websites out there, a lot of topics, a lot of great white papers on that. And if you ever do get stuck, you can reach out to us through my LinkedIn, Twitter accounts, and we'll point you in the right direction. All right, let's talk about attack vectors. Now, there are many attack vectors. I'm just going to talk about 3. Social hacking, brute force, and zero-day flaws. So let's meet Linda Harper. Linda Harper had an issue, and that is she forgot her password to one of her websites she frequented, I believe is LinkedIn. This is the actual person, by the way, who got hacked. And so she called a number. She went to Google, right? She went to Google. So it's LinkedIn technical support. And she got a phone number to call. And somebody answered on the other line, says, "Welcome to LinkedIn technical support. How can I help you?" I said, "Oh, look, I can't log into LinkedIn." "Oh, no problem. We can definitely help you with that, ma'am. Please allow us access to your computer." And so she did. I mean, it was technical support. Why she didn't know why you need access to her computer, so she downloaded the program, opened up her computer to this wonderful gentleman on the other line, and lo and behold, it was a hacker who had used SEO optimization to be able to bring up their website on Google results. And now they had her computer, they had her, and they took her for $2,500. So, this kind of social hacking is pretty new, right? Because we're pretty innovative using SEO. And, and to be honest, Google does a great job of filtering out websites that can take advantage of you, but it's not foolproof. And so you really need to exercise common sense. So it doesn't matter if you have the best security in the world if they can just call a phone number and bypass all of that, right? So I've heard instances of people who were on vacation. Bob, he was on vacation. Somebody calls up and says, "Hey, this is Bob, I'm on vacation. I need to reset my password because I have an urgent matter." And so the receptionist transferred into the IT help desk. IT help desk asked them a few cursory questions and issued a new password. Lo and behold, it was not Bob, but rather a hacker who now has access to your system, right? So there was no virus, there's no drive-by download. Somebody who used social hacking to gain access to your system. And so you need to prevent this with education. It's important that you educate your clients or your employer that that they need to be vigilant about this social hack attack. And you have the procedures in place and they get followed. I'll give you an example of a nuclear submarine. And I say this because nuclear submarines have probably the tightest security ever on the face of this planet. The sub itself, as you know, when you go on the sub, you're locked in there with 100 plus people for months at a time. And so, if you're not if it has anything to do with the nuclear operation of that sub, you're not allowed anywhere during that sector, in that sub, right? There's a section of the sub that has the nuclear power plants. You're not even allowed there. I mean, you might be cruising with these guys. You may have lunch, dinner with them. They might be your best buddies, but you cannot talk your way through into that subsection. They have an armed guard at the entrance to that door on the submarine. And so there was this admiral once who walked up to the guard and says, "Excuse me, I need to go in and talk to the chief engineer." "Sir, I need to see your ID." "Excuse me, I need to go through. I'm Admiral Soto. I need to get through." "No, I need to see your ID." And the admiral was put down on the deck, face down by the sailor. And the admiral promoted him on the spot for following procedures and not letting him through. And so that's the kind of vigilance that you need to be with your clients, your employees. Well, at least, go through these situations on a regular basis. Once a year, at least, several times a year, send them samples, email them examples of stuff that people are having. I mean, there's a reason why you still get spam on your email, right? Because it works. These hackers send out millions of emails with drive-by downloads. You click a link on an email. Before you know it, you've downloaded a program that now grants the hacker complete access to your network. And there's a reason they still do that is because it's effective. There's always some smo who hasn't updated their antivirus, hasn't updated their security, and they're going to click on the link to receive millions of pounds from a person in Africa who just expired, and they need the widow needs help with their money, and now before you know it, the whole network has been compromised. All right. Well, who can't forget Target? Gosh darn. Probably the poster child of security. Now, keep in mind, Target, Home Depot, you hear these companies who spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe even millions of dollars in security to be hacked. What does that compare to you or your company who may spend hundreds of dollars in security, renewing your Norton antivirus every year for your whole company? I mean, here we have Target that spends millions on security, and there we have you, right? And they still got hacked. And the fact is that Target has really good security. They were known before this hack as having excellent security, but the attack vector was through a third-party vendor that does maintenance under HVAC. And so a technician who the hacker went and got a job at the vendor, who happens to service Target's data center, and became an employee at the vendor, and then they walk right in to Target's data center. Oh yeah, I'm Juan from HVAC experts. Oh, sure, come on in. We're having problems with unit number 2. I walk in there with a USB drive, plug it into one of the servers, walk right out. Now I've compromised your network, the USB drive that I brought with me. So the fact is that you don't know where that attack's going to come from, right? And so we're going to offer some, so the maintenance company, right, that does their HVAC center. Now, keep in mind that many times you may not know that you're hacked. Many times you may not know that somebody is already taking over your network or your computers, because it's to the hacker's interest to remain anonymous and be able to lurk in the background and see your data day in, day out. So a lot of companies may think that, hey, everything's fine around here. We haven't had any ransom notes, so we haven't had anybody say that they've been locked out by a hacker. And really what it is, the organization has been already compromised, and the hackers are collecting data and copying data, which is what happened with Target, right? They didn't ask Target for anything. It's only when customers started complaining about charges on their bill that they had people put the dots together and realize it was compromised by Target, that they started an investigation. I got a great video here. I don't know if you guys will be able to see this over WebEx as well as hear this. So I'm going to start the video, and Lucy, can you tell me if you can hear the video or can see it well? If it doesn't work, then we'll just send you a link to the video. We'll move on. So Lucy, let me know if you can hear this video I'm playing. All right, so it looks like you can see the video, but you can't hear it. All right, good. So what we'll do is we'll send you a link to the video so that you can play this on your own leisure and hear it. So it talks about is a virus called Stuxnet. And this virus, maybe I'll just let it play so you can see the graphics. This was a unique virus. Stuxnet was designed to take advantage of problems with zero-day flaws in networks. And it exploits security gaps, as the videos are talking about that. And it was able to tunnel its way into many networks worldwide. And so because people did not bother to patch their equipment on time, there was many opportunities for this virus. But this virus was engineered for a specific target. And that target were the Iranian nuclear power processing plant centrifuges and in Iran. So when they found, when they tunneled its way into the target, when they finally found the target, that's when it disabled the centrifuges. But this thing spread everywhere, and so there's speculation that it penetrated many systems until they finally found the one it is. Now, unfortunately for the creators of Stuxnet, it means that not everybody has the code. And so this side virus, inadvertently what it's done is it was a blueprint that now allows any organization, both government and hackers, to learn from it in order to modify its payload and say, well, instead of hacking nuclear centrifuges in Iran, go ahead and attack, the U.S. Defense Department, command and control. And so it really is unfortunate that by releasing this virus that caused some good, which is shut down Iran's clandestine nuclear power program, now it's unfortunate that because it really was a blueprint that took a virus designed to a whole new level that was not heard of before. So, the fact is, you've got these countries who are already at war with each other. You got programmers and developers that work in Ukraine attacking Russia. You got Russian hackers are attacking Ukraine. And so the day that we start a world war, the day we go to war with a country like Russia, you're not going to hear a bullet fired, but rather you're going to hear attacks against Russian infrastructure via computer systems and disabling the command and control structures, communications, power, telephones. Those will all get knocked out before a single bomb gets dropped on the place. Because the fact is that we are already at war with many countries with skirmishes online. And, the latest example of that was North Korea. And so, it's important that you are aware that these security threats are getting better and better every day. And so security is a mindset. It's not a, you get it done once and you're done, right? You need to be vigilant. You need to patch your servers. And actually, here at IT Impact, we have a firewall, physical firewall. And that firewall does does packet inspections. So when an employee requests something, a download, for example, from the web, the firewall inspects every packet and determines if there's a signature in there that makes it identify as a drive-by download and prevents that. And so if you don't have a firewall, a physical firewall that's doing packet inspection, doing antivirus or doing anti-spam, you got more problems than you realize. Because of these days, with an investment of just $1,000, you can get a halfway decent firewall. Ours costs a little bit more, but it allows me to sleep better at night. right? So if you can sleep better at night, that's great. Anything you can do to invest and sleep better at night, you'll be well off for it. And so your clients need to have a firewall. You have to have a mindset and when it comes to security. All right, so I think I've scared you guys enough. So let's go ahead and talk about hardening SQL Server. Can you hear me now okay, by the way, John, Ben? Just want to double check that you can hear me. I know you couldn't hear the video, but can you hear me now? In the chat? Can you let me know in the chat? Okay, good, thanks. All right. Quick, what's the port that the SQL Server comes configured with to listen to? Who's the first one to tell me what the port is SQL Server will listen to when you install SQL Server? It's a particular port. Anybody know what that port is? Can you tell me in the comments in the chat? In the chat? Nobody going to tell me what the port is that SQL Server uses to? No? You're close, but no cigar, John. It's 1443. Remember that. 1443 is the port. Now, when you install SQL Server, it uses what's called dynamic ports. So it will change the port, and then you have to use the browsing service. And then it'll say, but you know, most, for example, Azure is set on 1433. And so if you want to connect to Azure, that's the port you got to use, period. Now, what will happen is, and you can do this on test, 1433 is what hackers, the first thing they'll do to try and get access, unauthorized access to your network. It's 1433. So the fact is that when you have an installation of SQL Server and you're using a standard port, and that's the first thing they're going to use, you're not putting much of a defense up, right? So what we recommend is not to use standard ports. We picked a different port to listen into on our server on the cloud. And we're not going to tell you what that port is. And we don't tell our clients what that port number is. Only our access applications know what that port number is. So there's no website, like Azure has a website, right? There's no port that people know. So all intents and purposes, unless they're listening to that port, they will not stumble across our server on the web. We use the fixed IP address to disable the browsing service. Again, these are things that hamper somebody hell-bent and compromising your network. It's not going to prevent it, but every little bit helps. We also force encryption between the server and access. And by the way, I'll upload this to the Access User Group, but this is the link, hyperlink to do that. How to configure so it encrypts the communication between SQL Server and Access. And then there is, for those people who have a enterprise version of SQL Server, the ability to encrypt also your SQL Server files. And what does that mean? Well, again, if I have a floppy, I keep saying floppy drive. If I have a flash drive, I can copy those files over to my flash drive, mount that SQL Server in on my home computer, and I'll have access to your data. But if they're encrypted, I can't do that. So we also have that enabled on our SQL Server on the web. Now, I can't tell you how important it is that you use a non-standard port. That's my first point here. Because a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll ask me, hey, can we host SQL Server on our network and then have our SQL Server Azure read our data so that if Azure were to go down, we don't go down, right? So we're using a synchronization between the cloud, or they have people who log in using the non-standard port. They're not using VPN for whatever reason. They decide not to use VPN. Well, I just tell them, look, if you want, I'll show you how many people try to log in with the SA account. And I've actually done this. I've actually installed a piece of software on my SQL Server when it was set to 1433. And I would see all the logins of hackers trying to log into my server with port 1433, right? They stumbled across the IP address, and then they started pinging that server with attempts to log in and SQL with SA. Does anybody know what SA stands for? Anybody in the comments? Who's the first one to tell me what does SA? What does SA stand for? And so, the fact is that I can see these attempts. And so they have a robot that's sending a login request with a different password every few seconds. And so, very good, Ryan. System admin. Some people call it server admin, but it's the SA account and SQL Server. Once you have access to the SA account, that's it. You're giving up the farm at that point, right? Then you can do anything they want with the SQL Server. So what you want to do is enforce a really long password on your SA account. Make sure that nobody can guess it, right? Because they'll try password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They'll start, they'll try all the standard passwords till the end of the days, because all they have is these robots that are trying to log in. And we'll talk about how you can leverage Windows security so that if they try logging in 3 or more times, they get locked out. We'll probably, I think we have that later on in the presentation. Oh, here it is. Okay, well, we got to that. All right, so basically what this does is, let me go back. Okay. What this does is there is a Windows policy that you can enforce on your SQL Server user accounts that says after 3 logins, they're locked out. 15 minutes. In our case, I have 15-minute lockouts. Now, what happened is you're just slowing down the hacker, right? Because now instead of letting them log in every few seconds, now they got to wait 15 minutes. And Ben and I, we are the admins for our SQL Server implementation. Going back to those franchisees, sometimes they'll try 3 times. They'll give us a call back and say, hey, they'll give us a call. Hey, we got locked out of our server. I don't know, maybe they went partying really bad last night and they forgot to put it in. They tried 3 times and they're locked out. And so we just don't just wait 15 minutes and you can log in again, as opposed to going in there and re-enabling the user account. So what that does is disables the user account for the 15-minute period, and then they can log in again. I don't think we've ever had anybody call us again after 15 minutes, maybe once or twice, but for the most part, they wait 15 minutes to go grab a cup of coffee and they can go back in. All right, so I included some links here for more tips on hardening SQL Server and Azure Security as well here. And I may, if you have a bit of a time, I may show you this part about the user logouts in the SQL Server. All right. So one of the things that I told you was that what we do is we have the username and password in the Access application. So the user doesn't have the SQL Server login and password. The client doesn't have that. Nobody has that. All we do, right? So if you were to somehow get a hold of Ben in the parking lot and kidnap him, call me, then I might give that up because I very much wouldn't like to have anything happen to Ben. But other than that, what we do is we use the Space 64 technique. Now, if you know anything about Access, if you're a serious Access user, you probably know that you could create a compiled version of your Access program, right? So say, for example, I have a procedure in my Access database that says login or SQL login. Well, even if you create a compiled version, if you use a bit editor, you can still open that MSDE file and be able to browse through there and be able to identify blocks of text that could be the username and password for your technique. With this base 64 technique, that's hidden. So it's another level of security that we have in our Access application. We use compiled versions of our applications, and we actually use SQL Server to issue updates to our clients. So we do SQL Server. So if we have an application that's used by 400 people throughout the U.S., and we have a bug fix, we use SQL Server to send that application update out to the wild, and that's a compiled version of Access. And furthermore, we're using this technique to hide the password, so somebody with a hex program or a bit program can't just try to go through the code page by page to try to identify what the password is. We also create a user table and validate user credentials in a store procedure, which is what I talked about extensively already in this presentation. And we don't provide the credentials anyway. I mean, why does the company need to know, right? It's our server. We're hosting their data. They don't need the credentials. So if I've had this, and we actually can provide them with a backup, right? What happens is some companies they want to make sure that they have access to data at all times, and so we provide an option where via Dropbox they get a copy of the data every night, and so we create a backup. They can then, if something would happen to us, our server would go bad, they have many years worth of backups that they've had access to through Dropbox. But we don't do that. All right, so we do partner with AccessHosting.com for hosting SQL Server. You can find me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/n/Juan Soto. Please, if you did hear about this presentation on LinkedIn, it's a favor to me. If you can go back on LinkedIn and provide a critique of tonight's presentation, I appreciate that. You tweet about it as well. My hashtag is JSoto22. And what I'd like to do now is actually show you the properties for users in SQL Server. So let me bring up my SQL Server here. And I need to get that SuxNet video first. Let me get that for you guys. 1 second here. And so I'll send you the link via chat here. Very well done. The video was very well done. That's we have a computer virus. There we go. I don't know who did this. Well, I do know. But it's just a very well video. So let me go ahead and send that to you. Don't launch it all at the same time because I want you to pay attention to what I'm going to talk to you about next. So let me go ahead and launch my SQL Server Management Studio here and show you log into Windows, and then go to security, and I have a series of logins here. And these are not standard accounts, so I don't know if they'll work, but let me just show you here in terms of status, right? So if somebody tried multiple times to log in, they will be locked out based on that Windows policy. And so what you do is you just unlock them with this uncheck, or tell them to wait the 15 minutes, right? So you can enable that policy under the security context of your video. So let me see if I can find the particular tip there. 1 second here. This is a good thing. I'll clear the password. Let me see if this one talks about it. Oh, here. To enforce password properties, right? To enforce password properties and expirations, right? So the password policy is on your Windows domain, not unlike what you would have in Windows, right? So your domain has that policy established where users can only log in 3 attempts, and then they're locked out for 15 minutes. That's a Windows policy, not a SQL Server policy. Once you have that policy configured, then you validate that through your SQL Server and they'll enforce it. So this, so here you can talk about that. Where can I find the password policy? So this is where you have the password policies, and then you have minimum complexity requirements, because we don't want this to be easy, right? Even though they're users in a user table, you want to make sure that they still have a percent sign, one cap, right? One cap, one letter capitalized. And so our application, one of the things it does, they can reset their password through Access. And we tell them when they reset their password in Access, you got to have at least one of these symbols, one of your letters have to be, and how we enforce that is through Windows policy on our server on the web. And so that's how we do it through this here. So this is a great way to do that. And then here, then you can do that. It doesn't tell you about the password expiration, but Password is complete, complexity requirement, password using visible encryption. Maximum age, maximum password. I'll send you this one anyway. This should point you right in the right direction if you were to enable something like this. You know, a lot of that things happens is I do these things and forget to record where I get it from. Let me see if I can show you a post that talks about the enable login policy limit. SQL Server or Windows? Let me just do this Windows, right? Because it is a Windows password. Windows Active Directory. Login time, you can do that. Link access, all right. Assign login hours. Security file, can limit number of login per sessions. That's not it. How to use Windows Active Directory policy object. Yeah. There we go. Enable login policy. Let me just do this real quick. Login policy, limit, and password temps, right? Password temps. All right, good trying. If you have that SQL Books link, you can let us know. That'd be great. See, label login policy, password, attempts. There you go. Well, that's IBM. I don't know if that works for it. Somebody's accounts. Enable Windows login password. Enable Windows. Right, Windows. There is a way where you can set it to 15 minutes using the policy editor I just talked to you about. Just go through that, and you want to leverage your, even if it's SQL Server in the cloud, you want to leverage the Windows, right? So we have a SQL Server that's running under Windows in the data center in Dallas, and it's our box. It's running SQL Server. It's running Windows 2012 with SQL Server Enterprise on there. And then, even though they're not part of the domain, I use a local Windows policy to limit people to 3 tries and you're out for 15 minutes. So it'll work either it's Windows or SQL Server logins. Either way. All right. I mean, and honestly, if you use a domain, it wouldn't hurt you to have 3 strikes and you're out either, right, for your clients. Okay, so got that. So again, if you were to configure server roles, you can do that here. Create a server role, and then you can validate that through this. So if you notice under my logins here, this is my computer, and I have my Windows account. So if you look at these properties, this is my Windows account and on my laptop, right? And it's Windows authentication. So I've authenticated through my Windows account on my laptop, and that's what grants me access to this. And I am also a owner on these databases that are located on my drive, and I'm also a member of sysadmin, right? So if I come in here and have a sysadmin role assigned to me, right? So if I go in here, I think that's in here, back in here, and I go to server roles, I'm part of the sysadmin group. So, leverage the Windows groups if that's something that you feel that's good enough, and then or use SQL Server Login Security if you really want to harden your server and your access database. Now, one last topic I didn't mention in my slides, but I do want to mention with you guys is you have the ability to limit what your application can do also with Windows security, right? So going back to our 3-group example, you got an administrator group, you got a user group, power user group, and then you got read-only group, which is where manager goes. I'm going to go ahead and launch one of our demo applications that we use to sell our services. And here, when I launch this application, it actually checks to see if I'm part of a particular group and shows me this part of it here. But otherwise, it'll be blocked out for me. So it authenticates me through the domain right in Access, right? So I'm not going through SQL Server. I'm going through the domain, using some code that we've obtained through the web. And then that code returns all the groups I belong to. And I query if you belong to a certain group on the domain. If you're a admin group, then you're allowed to see this stuff. So you could use Windows Security at the application layer itself and not so much at the SQL Server layer to be able to do this. I'm going to change this to AccessUserGroups.com. They'll get to the same place, AccessUserGroups.com. That's where I met. All right, so at this point, we're going to open the door to questions, you guys. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, Lucy, if you can enable the microphones again, that'd be great. And then let's see, if anybody have any questions, you can chat or they can ask us. Wow. HIPAA compliant. Our first question is HIPAA compliant. All right, Brian. Way to throw down the gauntlet. Okay. So again, I tell my clients I'm not a HIPAA expert. All right. So I'm the database guy. If you want a great database that works with SQL Server, I'm the guy you hire. Having said that, if you're that concerned about HIPAA compliance, we do recommend you host with Azure, and then we point you to the Azure policies on HIPAA, and you can decide as a company if you want to use the Azure hosting service that's HIPAA compliant. I don't pretend to be a HIPAA consultant. I don't pretend to know about HIPAA. I will, however, steer you to the right place so you can go to Azure and host your database with them, and then they say it's HIPAA compliant. Good question there. Anybody else has a question or comment, feedback? I see Octavio is with us tonight. Thank you, Octavio. Anybody else?
Juan, how are you?
I'm good. Are you going to pod? Looking forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, I'm going to be there. Yeah. I'm going to listen to what you're going to show there and, you know, whatever will be presented.
Great. If you haven't thought about this, please consider joining us for both Octavio and myself. It's the 2015 conference is up for registration, and wonderful schedule. And you can either come in, drive in every day, or join us and stay on premises, which is when we talk until late into the night.
Right, there is the speakers in the schedule. If you click the speakers, the link.
Yeah, we got a great roster of speakers. And by the way, we do this hike. We actually see these waterfalls. That's the first thing we do when we get there the first day. But today, this time around, we got Ellen. She's a prolific Access author. And Ryan had mentioned some books. Well, I'm going to show you one book that really helped me, Ryan, in terms of SQL Server. It's a fairly old book, and I always told myself one of these days I got to sit down and write my own book on SQL Server with Access. But let me tell you a book I recommend. Not so much on SQL Server Security, but SQL Server and Microsoft Access interaction. Oh, that's a nice watch. I'm a watch fanatic. Here it is. This was done by Mary Chipman and Andy Barron. And if you guys are at all serious about learning how to optimize Access SQL Server, I do recommend you get this book. It's fairly old now, 2000, but a lot of it still applies. I have it here in my office. Ben does too. Required reading if you want to pick up on all this stuff. I really would love to one day sit down and start writing my own book, but gosh, maybe one day. I'm not here. Tomorrow I'm not here. I'm busy. Wow, Robert, thanks. You heard it already once, huh? You heard my spiel once. Robert, do you love coming to my presentations? Thank you so much for your support over the years.
You're welcome.
It's good to back up the boss.
Welcome.
All right. So please keep in mind we have great presentations throughout the month at AccessUserGroups.org. We are also looking for people who are willing to start their own group. I would love to get a Access beginners group going. Somebody who, you don't have to be an Access expert. You can just decide that you're going to take this on, and this helps tremendously to become an Access MVP. I know for one, I'd love to, I'm recommending Fabio to be an MVP. He's been heading up the group for some time. And we have an MVP other than myself. We have Access Europe is led by another Access MVP. And, you know, you get a website, you get membership into Microsoft technical communities. And it's just a wonderful way to do this. So Anders heads up our European group, and then we have a Spanish group, and then we got Latin America, which is being held up by Fabio. We're always looking for somebody who's willing to step up to the plate, start their own group. It's a lot of fun. We'll help you out as much as we can. There's real need out there, real hunger for people who want to learn more about Access. The other thing I've been debating also recently is having a SQL Server and intense 3-day course on SQL Server Access, where you would work for 6 hours a day, 3 days in a row. At the end of that 3 days, you have a command of how to use SQL Server Access and really design wonderful solutions, not just SQL Server on the network, but SQL Server in the cloud. So one of the things I've been debating about whether or not to start a school, online school on that topic of SQL Server Access. All right, well, look, thank you so much, John, Ryan, Robert, Adam, Octavio, Ron, for joining us today. Call in user 3, 5, and 7. It's been an honor and a pleasure for me to host with you guys. We see you next month. I still don't have a topic for next month. If you do have a topic that you'd like to hear from us in February, please let us know. If you want to speak at this group, Robert, if you want to take a stab at it, please, by all means, let me know if you'd like to do a topic on SQL Server. Robert just installed SQL Server Express, so maybe that would be a good topic for next month, how to go through an installation of SQL Server Express, what's the gotchas there, how to properly install. Would you guys like to hear that next month, how to install SQL Server Express right, the right way? Let me know in comments if you're interested in that. And then other than that, well, I'm going to leave you with this little snippet. Your mission is to secure your database. Now that you know how to secure SQL Server databases, go out there into the yonder and figure it right and be vigilant day in and day out, because you have to be right every day, but the hacker has to be only right once. Go out, learn this stuff well, protect your data at all costs, protect your customers' integrity at all costs, be vigilant. And by all means, have fun when you're doing that, when you're at it as well. This is Mark Sawyer from AccessUserGroups saying so long, everybody. Good night, and God bless.